So, hi everyone, and thank you for joining us on the second edition of What's New with Eagle. Um, my name is Edwin Robledo. I'm part of the global support team for Autodesk Eagle, and with me is Jorge.
Yeah, my name is George Garcia. I am one of the product support specialists for Eagle here at Autodesk.
Well, what's new in Autodesk Eagle? We're really excited to give you the front row view of the latest tools that have been implemented in this new version of Eagle. We'll be covering many aspects of the latest edition, which came out a few weeks ago. We've added multiple tools such as selection tools, and many of them actually enhance your design time. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to our sharing screen and go live with Eagle, where Jorge is going to go and let us know all the new features and how you could take care of them. Now, as he gets ready to share his screen, I just want to let you know that there is a little PowerPoint going on the top right hand corner, which he'll be controlling to let you know, to give you an idea of where we stand and what are the benefits of each one of those new enhancements. So, Jorge, I'll let you go ahead and take control.
Thanks, Ed. So this is an existing design, and I'm going to use it kind of as a guinea pig to show all the new features that we have in Eagle. So looking at the PowerPoint that Ed mentioned that you guys would have, the current feature should be schematic pin snapping. I can't see it, so that's why.
Okay, so yeah, currently it's going to be schematic pin snapping. That's correct. Yeah.
Good.
Give me 1 second, Jorge. Somebody's saying that they have no sound. Is this the majority of people, or this is only one person? Okay. Okay, so Lawrence, could you go ahead and most probably kind of like log out and log back in to see if that takes care of it, okay? It appears that everybody else has sound, so it might be something local. So I would just leave the room and come back in. It might just go ahead and repair it, okay? Okay, sorry about that, Jorge.
Hey, no worries. So first feature I want to show is the schematic pin snapping. This is a subtle feature, but is actually saving us a lot of time on the support end. So when you activate the net command and you start to move near the vicinity of a pin, you notice that Eagle draws that little circle. Okay, that little circle guarantees that your net will snap to the end of the pin. In fact, you can click anywhere on the pin and it will snap to the end. So I'm going to try to click the middle of the pin, and you guys will see that it will snap to the end. So this is basically always guaranteeing that you have accurate connections. So gone are the days of close but unconnected pins in Eagle. So this is a small feature, but it's really useful and it's giving a lot of our users peace of mind when they're making their connections. So next, we're going to talk about slicing.
Slicing. Yep.
So slicing is an interesting feature. If we look, it's over here. It's available on both the schematic and the board. And what it allows us to do is to create a break in either a net or a trace. So for example, you can enter a specific breaking line in the command line, so you can enter points for the line to cross through, or you can just left click to start and left click again, and you'll see that it creates a separation. That separation is controlled by this width parameter, and I can just do Control Z to undo it. Where this feature really shines is on the board. So for example, let's say here I need to rework something. I can specify a width. I have my grid in millimeters, so the units are going to be millimeters. And I can just draw a line through. And what's going to happen is we have the cut, but there's also an air wire there. So what that's going to allow us to do is if we activate the route command, we can go off in another direction. So it simplifies rework. And as an added benefit, if we set the width to 0, and we have an outline on the dimension layer that's also 0 width, we can use this kind of as a trim tool. So I'll set this to 0, do the same thing here. Okay, we can use it to help us draw more complex shapes. So let's say I need to cut through here. What ends up happening now is that I can use the delete command and I can take out those little extra pieces. So you can use it as a way to make very complex shapes. So that's kind of an added benefit of the slice tool.
So it lets you kind of like rip up a trace only for a defined wire width.
Correct.
But you could also use it as a graphical tool as well.
That's right. So
Excellent.
it works on multiple levels. And like I said, you can enter specific points. So for example, with the slice tool active, I can just type in 61.75 and 61.75, 6.75. So the idea here is just to illustrate that you can enter a specific. So I hit enter, and now if I use a delete command, that's where the line went through. So it's very easy to control it and to specify where you want the cutting plane to be, or the cutting line to be more accurate. Okay, so the next feature we're going to show should be the layer presets. Good. So this is actually really nice because a lot of our users weren't aware that you could set up aliases and presets. So in newer versions of Eagle, this is at the front and center of the display dialog. So if we click here on the layer settings, okay, you'll notice that we can add, remove layers here, select all, select none, and we can add new presets or remove them. So by default, Eagle ships with 3 presets that we can set up. You can adjust them, for example, if you don't want to include that, and give this a new name. Okay, and if I say OK, those are the layers that are going to be on. Additionally, if I right-click on the display command, then I have all those presets that I created. The ones that are prefixed with the word preset, these ship with Eagle. They cannot be deleted through the display dialog. They have to be removed from the eagle.scr. But the ones that you make on the fly, those are easy to remove just by right-clicking and selecting delete. Or if you go into the settings, you pick the one you want and you hit remove. In this case, like I said, this is one of the built-in ones. It will actually flag you an error saying, please edit or remove the preset from eagle.scr. Okay, so that's the big benefit of this feature. It really puts it on the forefront that you can have layer presets and that you can set them up. Okay, our next feature should be alignment tools. Excellent. So let's go ahead and switch to another design very quickly.
If I could ask everybody just to go ahead and mute your microphones if you don't mind, greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, somebody has a dog somewhere. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and try to mute it here as well.
So looking at this board, you can see that some of the components are in nice little rows and vertical columns, but others are not, like this situation over here. So this is where the alignment tools can come in. They're especially useful if you're making like arrays of LEDs or things like that. So what we do is using the group command, we form the group, and then we click on alignment. Now there's several options here on alignment. If parts are off grid, you can click align to grid. You can align to the left, align to the right. You can align the centers horizontally. The centers can also be aligned vertically. You can align to the top, to the bottom, and then distribute. Now the distribute functionality warrants some explanation. So right now I've formed this group of 3 components, okay? When I invoke the distribute options, we're looking at the extreme dimensions of the group. So if I select distribute horizontally, what's going to happen is they're going to be evenly spaced, but within the limits of the group. Since these 2 components define the limit, this was the only one that moved. Okay? Now here at this point I can say align to the bottom, which will look for the bottommost edge of the group, or align to the top, which will look for the topmost edge of the group. And there we are. Now again, I can do Control Z to undo that. Another thing we want to keep in mind is, like I said, the way we move the group is going to affect the limits of the distribute options. So let's say I move this guy, just this guy by itself. Let's say I put him over here, and now I create a greater separation. Let's say this one's over here. Okay. If I form the group now, and I go to align, we distribute. Again, the components defined the extreme edges. So that's a way to kind of control the spacing between parts. What you're going to notice is that the spacing will always be even. Also, you have to be careful which way you decide to go. For example, if right now I select to align to the left edges, then they all kind of run over each other. So keep that in mind when you're using the alignment tools. Like I said, it's not just the horizontal alignment. We can do something similar here. Select this. Okay, we select alignment, and I can choose to say, let's put it to the right edge, and then distribute vertically. There we go. So it's very handy for when you're arranging your components on your layout. It can really save you a lot of time and a lot of effort to get everything in a nice line. Okay, so let's move on to the next feature.
The new routing engine, Jorge. That's
New
what we're going
routing
to talk
engine.
about next, yeah.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and let's check that out on our other board. Okay. So here we have a few connections that have been defined that need to be made. Let me go ahead and rip up the polygons, that way it's easy to see what the engine is doing. And there's a lot of new functionality in the routing engine. We're going to spend some time here. So I click on the route command. You'll notice that there's several new options here. Okay, I have my via set up. I'm going to put in an appropriate width. Do 10 mils. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this air wire. And you'll notice that we start to route. Now right now I have the walk around obstacles mode active. So what does this mean? This means that I can try to ram into any other non-signal related object, and it's actually going to try to walk around it. So right here, I can do something like this, and it's obeying the DRC. Now, let's say I'm not happy with that trace. Let's say I think it's too close, and I want to have a little bit of extra room. Well, that's where loop removal comes in. So I can just immediately start drawing that connection again. And as soon as I intersect, you notice how Eagle is giving me a preview of what it's going to do. Okay, it won't do it unless I left click, but it's giving me the preview. So I feel better with a route like this. So I'm going to go ahead and left click. So it makes it really easy to rework parts of your layout. If you find that you paint yourself into a corner, that can really make it easy. Otherwise, you have to go ahead and rip up the trace and reroute it. Now that's not the only thing that's new to the routing engine. Let's say I'm routing. I'm routing my way over here. And I decide I want to undo this last segment. If I just start hitting backspace, I can undo different segments. So again, it makes it really easy to adjust your layout on the fly. Okay. Now, let's say, for example, that I also want to transition to the bottom layer for whatever reason. We can still use the old mechanism of the middle mouse click. What you'll see is that a via will show up on the end. This is in stark contrast to how vias were placed in earlier versions of Eagle. In earlier versions of Eagle, you would just transition, and the next time you left click, the via would appear at that transition point. However, because of the obstacle avoidance mode and some of the other routing features we have planned, that behavior no longer made sense. So now you can get a preview of where the via is going to be before you place it. And the walk around router will also adjust accordingly. So you'll be able to see the via avoid routing over anything. Now, besides the middle mouse click option, you can also use a spacebar now. So in this case, we have a 2-layer board, but if we had a multi-layer board, you can use a spacebar to rotate throughout the various, to cycle through the various layers, and then Shift spacebar does it in reverse order. So it's very easy to switch to whatever layer you want to switch. If you notice here, the tool actually tells you what layer you're switching to. So the next layer here is going to be the bottom layer. So I select it. Again, I can hit my spacebar. Now it says next layer is top. And again, thanks to loop removal, it's giving me a preview of what it will do if I left click. So that's a very handy feature. It's very easy to use, and it can really aid in getting your rework done. Okay.
Of course, this supports all layers that you define on your design. So if you have a 14
Correct.
layer setup, you could cycle through the different layers that you wish to go through. Okay,
Now,
so
now some of you may be asking, well, what if I don't want to do the loop removal? What if I don't want to have that active? Well, we can turn that feature off. We can also turn off the obstacle avoidance. So you're in full control. If you want to do full manual routing, like there was in earlier versions of Eagle, you just disable both options. Obviously, there are situations where you will not want the loop to be removed. Situations where you have high current that needs to be processed to the board, but because of space constraints, you can't have that wide a trace. You want to have multiple routes on different layers in parallel. That way they can carry the current. In that scenario, you would disable this function. Okay, but you are in complete control of how this engine behaves. So now let's go ahead and go on to our next feature, which
the
should
next
be
feature we're going to be talking about is it's design blocks, that whole design reuse type of feature that we have now. Okay.
excellent. So this one is interesting. This is one of the bigger features that we added to Eagle. So if we switch back to the schematic, you want to think of design blocks as what pieces of circuitry do I expect to reuse in the future? What's a good candidate? In general, you don't want the whole design to be a design block, but you're looking for pieces that you can reuse. And looking at this design, it's pretty obvious what should be a design block, and it's each of these little power supply circuits. So this design was made before the introduction of design blocks, but obviously it's very easy to see that if I make a design block out of one of them, I can repeat the layout for the other two, and I can also keep my schematic organized. So let's go ahead and see how we make a design block. So what we do is first, using the group command, we define a group. We go File, Save Selection as Design Block. So now we look at the bottom, and it says Control plus right click to continue to select in the board. Okay, so I'm going to Control right click. Now we're on the board, and we can see that it automatically selected the components. But because the routing can obviously be very different, you can have 3 or 4 traces going for the same net, it doesn't assume the traces. So at this point, we add in the traces that we want to include as part of our design block. So I'm going to go ahead and add these. Okay. I'm holding control the whole time that I'm doing this, that way I'm adding to the group. Okay, and that's pretty much what I want to have as my design block. So what I can do now is, actually let me include this right here as well. There. Perfect. Okay, let's do Control right click again, as we can see, to finish the selection. And now we get this. So what we do here, if you notice, we have our schematic portion and we have our board portion. And we're basically saving as if it were a library component. So at this point we can put in a description. So we might, and we can use HTML tags. So we can put in bold, 3.3 volt, TC 1015, power supply. Just put in a description.
Also supports HTML links if you want to.
Very generic. Obviously, you would include the data sheet. Because this supports HTML, you can use the href HTML command. You can insert images. All of that is supported by the description field. Additionally, you can add attributes. You can add attributes here for this design block. So we can say, something like function. And then whatever other attributes you want to define. So the last thing you have to do is give this a name. So I'm going to give it TC1015 underscore 3.3v or 3v3. Let's do it like that better. v3. So we'll say OK. And that saves the design block. So now if we want to reuse it, it's very simple. We go over here to the Add a Design Block option. Go to DBL. And we'll find it right here. And we can just say OK. And now we have it. We can add it in. And if we look, now it wants us to place it somewhere on the design. I can right click to rotate it. And I can choose where I wish to place it. So as you can see, this would have been very helpful when I was first designing the circuit. I could have just implemented the same layout for all 3 power supplies and just put them in and not have to go and manually redo each one. So it's a very handy feature and one that we hope you'll be able to take advantage of.
Yeah, since this is treated as a file on itself, we're hoping that we'll be able to add to the web page and expand where you'll be able to upload and share your own design blocks in the near future as well.
So yes, as you can see, they're their own separate file. And you don't always have to do a schematic and a board. You can do a schematic on its own and a board on its own. So it's very flexible. You can decide what blocks you want to have because some circuits have to be laid out slightly differently depending on the board that you're working on. So you can, for example, some of these, jumpers and decoupling capacitors and things like that, these are schematic only because once you are making your board, you want to place this very carefully. So that covers design blocks. Let's go on to our next feature.
And now we're going to talk a little bit about a new great feature in Eagle, which is the BGA fan out. BGA fan out is if you have a small or a large ball grid array component, this engine will just basically run on that and give you the capability. So, Jorge?
So in order to use the BGA fan out tool, there has to be a component, a BGA component in your design like we have in this example that ships with Eagle. So what we do is we click on the BGA auto router. It looks at the various ICs that are in your design. We've already selected, the BGA component to be the one that we're interested in fanning out. If we click Edit BGA, we'll open up this screen, and there's a lot to see in this screen. You have your signals. You can dictate what layers they go through. So I can go to Edit, and I can specify from what layer to what layer they route through. The types of vias that are going to be used. We can have It go through, just the inner layers, one layer at the top. We have complete control over which layers this signal is routed through, is fanned out through. Obviously, if you make a configuration that isn't possible, where it isn't possible to get a full fan out with that layer configuration, then you won't get the result you want. But as an experiment, you can try something like this because you're keeping everything on the surface layers. You're avoiding blind and buried vias here. Okay, the BGA fan out router can also handle micro vias. So by having, as a first pass, you may want to have micro vias enabled, and then try playing with some of the layer configurations. In this case, it will make a difference because we've set up all the layers to just use the main through-hole vias. So we'll say OK, and we'll say OK here. And what we're going to do is we're going to let it run. So right now it's running. When it's running, you can look here at the bottom right, and you'll be able to see its progress. So always keep an eye out if it seems like it's freezing or anything like that. Just take a quick look at the bottom. And as you can see, it fanned out all of the signals in this BGA. So now you can manually route and reach all of the signals that are important in this BGA. And that took, 30 seconds. Whereas the manual effort behind trying to fan out a BGA would have taken much longer. So it's a very handy feature. You do have to play sometimes with the layers depending on the complexity of the BGA. But in general, you can usually get results like this. Okay, so like I said, it's very easy to use. It supports blind and buried vias. It supports micro vias. And you can completely control what layers you're fanning out to. So in this case, this is actually a pretty ideal circumstance because you're using, just normal through-hole vias. There's no via in pads. And you've restricted the fan out to just 2 layers. So this helps have a very low cost board. With large BGAs, this may not be possible. You may have to use inner layers. In fact, the BGA may dictate how many layers your board uses. So that's something to keep in mind when working with the fan out and how you can adjust it and play with it. So next feature that we're going to talk about is,
You know, in the latest revision of Eagle, we've had implemented a new system by which it has a kind of a new view and a new feeling when it comes to managed libraries. With the new system, we're able to update some libraries on a cloud-based system. Even though Eagle does have its local install libraries, it gives you access to a system which is on the cloud. And Jorge is going to let you know about this now. I mean, the fact that you could select components from other libraries directly to your own custom library, that's pretty amazing. In the past, you had to do all these move, copy, cut, paste features. So being able to navigate, actually even navigate to the cloud-based system is actually pretty neat. So right now, we're going to go ahead and enter a Q&A session. If there's any, no? Oh, oh, sorry about that. Oh, you know what, Jorge? I had that towards the beginning. So the new selection. Sorry about that. I had that towards the beginning. So that the new selection too. Go ahead. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, a lot of these features they come up really handy and they're kind of like variants a lot of them. So we kind of did an overview of in essence what they do, but when you actually start working with them, you'll see that they give you a lot more capabilities. Now we have one question, Jorge. Angelo is asking, he noticed that when selecting an IC in a schematic block by clicking the plus symbol, it seems to have to click directly on it to move it. Is there a setting that he could slightly make this less precise without having to click directly on the handle?
Go ahead and select it. All right, let me minimize the chat window here. Okay, so I believe Angelo is referring to the fact that I went pretty much straight to the part origin to move it. Okay, and in order for this to work, you do have to pick an origin. It has to be a component origin because otherwise you'll invoke the selection behavior. So you have to be within a catch factor's distance to be able to select it. In the future, this is something we're looking at improving. But as of right now, the best you could do is you would go option set, miscellaneous, and adjust the catch factor to give you a bit more room so that you don't have to be perfectly on it. Out of habit, I always try to be pretty much spot on with it. But there is a little bit of margin, you know.
Having it precise, having such a level of precision allows Eagle to know if you're defining a new group or you are selecting the group. So that's why they put it so precise for now. Now you do have the capability of actually kind of redefining that if necessary. Sure thing. We're currently in the Q&A session, so if anybody has any other questions, we'd like to go ahead and take care of those. If you want us to review something else, we still have approximately around 15 minutes to go, so we're quite comfortable. If anybody wants us to recap anything else.
Okay. So to start with Jody Roberts, snap to origin. I'm not 100% sure what you're asking there, Jody. Could you clarify a little bit more?
Michael also is asking in regards of laying out flex and rigid's PCB.
Mm-hmm. So to take advantage, since we're answering some questions for Kevin, the purpose of the slice command in the schematic would be really to use it for as a drawing tool like we did previously, or on the off chance that the way you laid out your nets, you're not happy with it and you want to rework them. The same idea kind of works. The only thing you have to be careful of here is setting the separation. Thanks to the pin snap feature, it's not super critical to be on a 0.1 inch grid anymore, but it still is useful to do it. So in the case of the slice tool, if you're going to use it in a schematic, you would make sure to pick some multiple of 0.1. So you might use 0.1 itself. That way, wherever it cuts, you have half a grid distance on each side of it, and that would keep you on grid. So that's kind of the only thing to keep in mind with slice on the schematic. For myself, I've only ever used it for drawing purposes.
Yeah, I've used it on the board mainly for instead of using the split command. It just makes easier.
Okay, so let me see. Let's get back to Michael and Jody's question. Okay, so components on both flex and rigid portions. Possible to define component pads is it possible to find component pads on the inner copper layers? Not yet. At this point in time, it's not possible. What you would end up doing is some sort of workaround in the library, and you would have to have really good communication with your board house to make sure they got that right. So right now, it's not possible to define component pads on the inner copper layers.
Also, there's a question in regards of defining slots in the library. That's something that we're currently working on as well.
Yeah.
We just don't have that feature, so for now you could continue using the milling layer to define your slots, and make sure that you do a Gerber file for the milling layer and allow the board house to understand that those are going to be your slots as well.
Okay. I see what Jody's suggestion is saying. So basically, when the group command is active, if you're within range of the origin that you have to drag, to have a little circle pop up. So that's a good idea, Jody. What we have planned to resolve this situation is actually a little bit more flexible than that. So we probably wouldn't implement it that way. The goal that we have is for you to be able to click anywhere on the object and drag it, not just the origin. The origin would now become more important for scripts and things like that. That's kind of the end game. We're not there yet, but that's the goal.
So Michael has a question in regards of having DRC regulations for flex as well as for rigid boards. Well, right now, in DRC, you can load different settings, but it only works one at a time. So simultaneously, no, they don't work right now. So you would have to load them on a separate. So you would click on the load command and load whatever DRC settings you wish to use for your rigid side, and then you would have to load the other DRU file for your flex side. A layer presets actually started on version 8.2.2. On this latest version that was released a few weeks ago, that's where the latest presets actually is working. Okay, so I see here a question in regards, are there any plans of showing which components are selected when they are overlapping? I guess you mean like a real-time type of DRC for overlaps. So right now, yeah, if there's plans, absolutely. Don't have a timeline on that roadmap or nothing like that, but absolutely. So you want to just understand if something is overlapping something else and know about it immediately. So right now, you actually have to run DRC to actually get the report that lets you know about it. Can we do flex boards? Well, there's certain technology that we do support that would allow us to do flex boards. We're not have all the necessary tools implemented at this time, but we know a lot of government agencies that are actually using Eagle, and they actually are using flex technology and using Eagle as well. So we have enough tools. There's one ULP I know that's very useful, which is the
Teardrops.
teardropping. Yeah. Teardrops is one of the ULPs that Eagle has, which accommodates some of the uses for flex boards as well. Hey Kevin, thanks for the comment. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. So to summarize what Ed was saying, basically it's possible, it's not nicely supported right now to do the flex
Yeah,
boards.
correct. Yeah, it summarizes it really
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So,
If there's any questions that were further on in the beginning that weren't answered, please feel free to type them again. Because I noticed that we have a pretty long chat thread. I don't know if maybe we missed something.
yeah, no, I got 'em. I
You
got
got
'em.
them? You
Yeah,
the man,
yeah.
Ed.
I was making comments on them. Yeah, I got 'em. I got those as well. Okay, so
When selecting and moving it, to choose which one to select and move. So there isn't a list. What ends up happening is you either do the group cycle select for denial. You either do the group cycle select wherever anything overlaps, hold down Alt and left click to cycle through the nearby items. If you're using one of the modal commands, then you use the old style cycle select, where if Eagle isn't sure, the icon will change to look similar to the move command, and you will right click through the nearby items to cycle. It doesn't pop up as a list. You're basically just right clicking and left clicking to cycle through the nearby items.
the list option sounds like a good idea, though. Okay, so I think we've covered all the questions. I'll just like to just do a little recap if anybody else has any commentary about it. Okay, so wait a minute, and some people are typing there.
No, Mike, no. Because the components will be on the surface layers. You can use interlayer routes as part of a design block, but the components will still be on top and bottom.
So you have the traces on the inner layer that will come through, but not the components itself.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we want to make sure we thank everybody for your participation and in joining us on the second edition of What's New with Eagle version 8. We're hoping that many of these new features will let you understand that the development team are implementing all of the necessary tools to optimize your design time and enhance your experience using Eagle. The roadmap looks quite aggressive, so continued improvements are to be expected, and soon we'll be experiencing the first benefits of a ECAD MCAD solution, which is coming up rather soon. Our experienced users, such as those that are joining us using a previous version of Eagle, you'll be able to get up and running in no time since the enhancements are fully aligned with earlier versions of Eagle. And please remember that the latest version of Eagle can save in the Eagle 7 format. So this should make our legacy users feel confident to transition to the latest version of Eagle and enjoy its benefits. The improved manual routing has proven to be a big time saver. No matter how simple or complex your design is, the walk around obstacle avoidance will greatly improve your design time as well. Adding library management expands the capabilities of accessing the latest components without having to update your Eagle. As soon, we'll be able to have your own components on the cloud, and you have the option to either share them or just have them made private. The group command allows you to define a group easily, add to the group, and remove from that group. All this together is meant for you to just have a design time optimization and get done with your project in a very fast manner. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks for being here. If you have any questions, I posted earlier on our email address, as well as we look forward to seeing you on the forums. Our forums have been quite active, so please joining us there. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, we encourage you to join us on the forums. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Great stuff. Thank you.